Hey everyone, and welcome to a new video. So today I've got my friend Mudizle here, and we're going to be going over some of our first impressions on Cyberpunk 2077. So without further ado, let's just get straight into it. Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm very excited to talk about the game.
Cool. So just for everyone at home, where exactly are you up to in the game?
Um, I got up to Johnny Silverhand terrorizing my brain, and Takamura saved my life in a scrapyard.
Cool. Yeah,
So
so
that's where I'm at.
so that's roughly where I'm at as well. So for people at home that haven't played the game, that's roughly like 5 hours in. We're not going to go into any like super spoilery territory, so you should be okay watching this whole conversation. We're mostly going to be talking about the quality of the game and our general thoughts about how it's been presented, some of the technical aspects, all that kind of stuff. So I guess first things first, I haven't really asked you what you think of the game. I've only watched you stream a tiny bit of it. What are your like broad stroke thoughts about the game so far? What do you think about it?
Honestly, I think it's like a one. I think it's a great game, by the way. I know on PC it's a little different than on consoles, but in terms of like gameplay and atmosphere, it hits everything right, and it's just a lot of fun to go through.
Yeah, so I'm nodding profusely here because you've hit on one thing that I think I mean I guess we might as well talk about this as like the first major point, but like
Yeah,
for me the strongest point in this game by far is they have absolutely nailed the atmosphere, like the music, the sights of the city, the aesthetic. It's all
100%.
yeah, it's all so strong. Like it's comfortably for me the strongest part in the game.
Yeah, for sure. It's literally like it's just nothing you've ever seen before in gaming, and like honestly, like in any terms of media. I know it sounds like a lot, but it really is that like great.
Yeah, no, I think Night City is a pretty unique vision, and certainly some of the like the I guess they push the kind of hyper capitalist, hyper corporatist aesthetic to such an extreme that I don't really think anything else has really done it. Certainly not. It almost to me, it feels like it's got a bit of a like Tarantino quality of like schlockiness and coolness almost in a way that something like Blade Runner doesn't really have because it's more of an oppressive kind of like patient atmosphere. If that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, I kind of agree. Yeah, it's like I mean on that really, yeah, it's like I didn't think about the Blade Runner thing. That Blade Runner is more oppressive, and this one's kind of like everybody's like used to it, and everybody like enjoys it almost.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like it feels like a very fast-paced world, for
Yeah,
sure. Like everything's moving a million miles a minute, and that's another really cool aspect of our life. I think that's definitely helped by the fact that you play as V, who is someone who exists within the criminal underbelly of the city. Like you're a mercenary, you do job for fixers. The morality of the jobs you do is kind of like grey. It's not super. It's not like a sticking point of the game, right? Like you kind of just do
yeah.
jobs and whatever you can to get paid, right?
Yeah, it's funny, like, you talk to the cops in the game, and they're like, "Oh, you're a fixer," or whatever. Like, everybody, like, agrees with each other, like, what their role is, whether it's bad or good, because it's, like, the norm there. It's really cool.
Hmm. So yeah, I guess honestly the first thing I want to talk about is obviously so I more or less agree with you that I think
Yeah.
overall this is a good game, but I don't think I've ever said that with so many caveats in my entire life. I don't know, are you on the same page or are you more positive in general?
Yeah, no, I definitely have, like, criticisms over the game, but, like, we've grown up with, like, New Vegas and Skyrim, like, it's not the first time this has happened, but it's also, like, I always enjoy it when it happens, if that makes any
Sure.
sense.
Yeah, no, of course, I understand. I guess like the first thing I've noted down to talk about just real quick is so for anyone who's thinking about buying the game, one thing you should absolutely know is this is, as it currently is, in my experience, a pretty buggy game, like at this point, I would say for sure. I think you said that you've had less bugs than it seems like most people have. I remember talking on stream about it.
Yeah, I've had very little trouble. It's usually just like minor graphical things or like entertaining bugs, like T poses and stuff like that. But
Sure,
otherwise,
yeah.
it's like great. Yeah, for me, I've
Yeah,
been one of the lucky ones.
okay, fair enough. Yeah, I guess my experience has been a bit different. It's definitely been like there's not really been any bugs that have been utterly game breaking for sure. I think the worst one I had was I am doing a side quest at the minute where you kind of basically you spawn a boss at some kind of ritual type site. And what happened is when the boss spawned, you're supposed to shoot her, and then she glitches out and then kind of spawns somewhere else in the arena, and then the fight begins. But what happened was when I shot her, the fight didn't begin. She just sort of stood there and took the shot. So I shot her over and over again, and nothing was happening, and I couldn't really work out what was going on for a while. Eventually, I got frustrated and kind of just looked up on YouTube what it's supposed to look like, and it was very clear that, okay, something's bugged out here. I need to load to a previous save. So I lost about 10 minutes of progress on that, but I think that's basically the worst thing I've had.
Damn, that's yeah, like when it actively like disrupts like a gameplay experience, that's probably the worst. But
Yeah.
you know, I didn't have anything like that. I was soft locked once with Jackie. Jackie just stood in my doorway and I
Yeah.
couldn't get out. So I just, did like a fast save and I came back.
Yeah,
That's for me the worst.
yeah, the main issues with the game are definitely they seem solvable for sure. Like if you're just loading back out and back in again, seems to resolve most of those types of issues. But I just think it's important to mention. Obviously, it's not been the smoothest launch in history. It definitely is a somewhat buggy game. But I guess now that's out of the way, one of the strongest points, and I'm sure you'll agree, for me is the main quests and the characters you get to interact with. It feels like there's a nice, colourful cast of characters that are reasonably well written. I maintain, I think they all have kind of a Tarantino level of schlock to them, and they're all kind of cartoonish but still believable, you know?
Yeah, 100%. The main characters that you talk to in the game that are like your partners in crime essentially, they have like great personalities and like even though you only spend like what 30 minutes an hour max with them, it feels like you've been playing through the game with them since like forever, and it's like it's really easy to like develop a relationship with these characters, including
Yeah,
the villains too. It's everything like the characters are written perfectly, well, not perfect, but they're written very
yeah.
well for what they are.
They're written very well, I think, for sure. There's definitely elements. And again, I kind of do think it like almost plays into the game a little bit, but I definitely do think there's like moments of cheese and corniness here and there. But I think it kind of adds to it in a way. It gives it a
Yeah,
very like larger than life, almost like I said, cartoonish quality.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just like with the setting of the game being like obviously the cyberpunk setting, like it allows for more, like you said, like cheesiness, and like it still feels cool when they talk like this because that's how they talk in the game, right? These characters are from Night City, and they
Yeah,
talk in such a way that like even though it sounds corny to us, like to them it sounds like cool,
yeah,
essentially.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, I guess this is no surprise to anyone who's played. Like, did you play The Witcher 3 actually?
Yes, I'm near the end, but I have not finished the main story.
Oh right, sure. Well, you're miles ahead of me. I think I played like the first 15 hours. I'm up to like the end of the first major arc, but I'm
Mhm.
not. I've nowhere near finished that game. I want to go back and play it. But I mean, the writing in that game's great, and I don't think it's a surprise that CD Projekt Red can pull out a game that has interesting characters, well written characters, likable characters, that kind of stuff, right? I guess one thing I'm going to get into some of my criticism now because I really do feel like this is a game of two halves. I've said this to multiple people, but I kind of feel like this is a great game hiding in the body of a bad game. And what I mean by that is that there's a couple issues I have that I think are slightly more fundamental than obviously we've gone over the bugs and those are what they are, but
Yeah.
I feel like there's a level of polish that's lacked in some of the integral game systems. So one of the things that really surprised me is I can't believe how similar to almost Borderlands this game feels like. Do you get that at all, that comparison?
Um, yeah. Well, when I first saw gameplay of the game, I thought it was gonna be like Fallout 4, like in a bad way. You know how it's like janky, the shooting and everything. But it
Sure.
was smoother than I thought. But yeah, definitely unpolished. It did feel a little Borderlandsy. But I
Yeah.
have also issues with like the gunplay, like personally, that I'll talk about in a moment.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I've got a couple of issues there as well. But to be fair, when I compare it to Borderlands, I mean more the integral like game design. So stuff like the fact that every enemy drops a gun and you can loot tons of guns
Uh,
and do you know what I mean? Like, and
yeah,
there's so
yeah,
many like mini items that you can pick up for crafting and that kind of thing. There's a lot of systems in this game, right?
yeah, 100%, yeah. It's like
Yeah.
going through the menus, like everything can be upgraded, everything can be crafted, everything can be picked up. A little overwhelming, but like once you get, I think it's something you can overcome for sure.
Yeah, but this is kind of like I guess my core if my biggest criticism at the minute based on the first like 5 hours or so I think
Yeah.
is the fact that for me it feels a little bit like if it was a little bit like the game meandered a lot to me. I feel like all of these systems could have been tightened up. Like I didn't feel like there needed to be so many different guns in the game. Didn't feel like there needed to be so much loot in the game. And it just feels like a lot of fluff, and I don't know how much it necessarily adds to the game, at least for me. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I'm not too bothered by it, except for like, of course, when like my storage is encumbered. But like,
Yeah.
it is a lot of guns. Like seeing like you pick up three of the same SMGs from like the same pack of people, and it's only like a one DPS difference. Like having
Yeah,
to go
exactly.
through and like go through the menus and find the right DPS. Oh, but this one has a different perk. It is a little like tedious, but I
For sure.
guess if you're like a fan of min maxing, like this is for you because you can get like a variety of different things for your guns.
So actually, here's kind of a funny thing. Speaking of min-maxing, I feel like I've built my character so fucking badly. In
Oh
terms of like
yeah,
what perks and tech tree options I've chosen, I feel like I've done so badly. Because so when I came into this game, I was like, okay, you know what? I kind of want to be like a, I think it'd be cool to be like a kind of craftsman type person, like,
yeah,
constantly like looting everything, breaking stuff down, recreating new guns out of old guns, that kind of stuff. But I don't know, man. Like for me, the crafting systems feel very basic, and I kind of regret building my character like that personally. I don't know. What sort of build did you go for?
yeah. Now that you bring that up, I didn't think about this before we started. The building, like the skill building in this game, it's just basic like stat buffs. Really, it's nothing
Yeah,
like nothing to make your character yours. It's just general like stat boost. I did
yeah.
find one tree in the under the cool section, literally the cool section. It's called cold blood. So every time
Oh
you get a
yeah.
kill, you get a stack and you get movement speed and like whatever, like faster reload, like just like huge stat bonuses across the board. And then you can like pair that with annihilation and like it adds more after kills. I don't know. I found like a cool killing spree sort of like build. That's like the only thing I could find like going through all the trees really.
Yeah. So just to explain, actually, for those who haven't played the game, basically there's I think I want to say there's 6 stats in the game that you can level up, and you get points to basically when you level up, you get a point. You can assign it to whatever stat you want. There's if I remember correctly, there's cool, which is what you were talking about now, which is kind of like it's almost like I guess stealth in terms of combat, and then like charisma in terms of conversation. You
Yeah, correct.
have technical ability, which is like your crafting, your making grenades. I can't quite remember for stat checks what that covers, but stuff like I know there's like one part in the game where you have the option to disarm a mine, and that's based on your technical ability. Um,
Yeah. I
so
think it also
there's
works for like hacking computers and whatnot, stuff like that.
Oh sure, yeah, stuff like that. Then you've got reflexes, which is movement speed, like quick gunslingy type stuff. Like you've got handgun upgrades in that tech tree, stuff like that. You've got I forget what this one's called, but it's the one that gives you extra HP. The like body or something.
Is it not strength? Doesn't that go hand in hand?
It might be strength. Yeah, it's the one with like annihilation as one of the tech trees.
Yeah, it comes with like it's like a subtree of strength, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think you're right there. I think it's just called strength, but that one just gives you like straight like damage and HP up as well.
Yeah.
And then the final one is intelligence, which is like hyper focused on the hacking side of things, right?
Yeah. Like the
Yeah. So
combat side of like hacking.
yeah. So those are like the categories you have, and each of them have different weapon specializations. Like there's tech weapons in the game that get a buff from the tech stuff. There's there's I can't remember what melee gets a buff from. There's probably a couple that buff melee actually, but there's definitely like a melee stat, I feel like.
Yeah, there's a subtree under strength and I think one under the agility, if there is an agility one, where
Yeah,
it's like
it's
oh my
reflexes.
god.
It's
Yeah.
reflexes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, so but yeah, I do agree that like as much as it, yeah, I feel like I guess one of my issues with this is I feel like they could have had less options and made those options more impactful. Like you said, right now it's just like flat stat ups, and it doesn't feel like I don't know, it just doesn't feel as interesting to me, at least in the first 5 hours. Maybe that expands a bit for later down the line, but for now it feels a little dry to me for sure.
Yeah, it's like for example, like let's go back to Skyrim again. You can go into like, all these different like spell trees, like literally like for mages and all that, like illusion and like destruction, whatever. There's not really that like direct translation into the cyberpunk world. So everything is just gunmen that can shoot better or gunmen
Yeah.
that can fight better. It's not really like too advanced, which is a shame. Like I don't know what I could think of, but like it's a shame that it's that simple.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. But so one thing I've said a lot actually is I think that personally, a lot of these kind of systems, like the crafting, like the different stat ups, like all the side quests you can do, I feel like a lot of these systems are emblematic of my main issue with the game, and I think that it's honestly, so this is probably my hottest take I'm gonna have during the video. I don't know why this game's an open world game. I think this would have been better as a linear structured story game in a cool city, with the city being like a hub point as opposed to an open world. How do you feel about that?
That is a very hot take. I will say because I think this game is planning on having multiplayer now at some point.
I'm not sure about that. I haven't heard that.
Wait,
I'm just
uh,
going based off what I've played so far
yeah,
anyway.
I will say after doing like the main story mission before the title screen shows up, it did feel like a nice tight like story. I'm like, oh, I don't need to go open world to be like satisfied so far. Like right now, I'm having fun as is. So I
Yeah.
kind of agree with you there, but I do enjoy just like the open world aspect and like the NPCs and like the random fights you can get into. That seemed very enjoyable to me, if not like
Sure.
it's part of the setting. But
I
I can
guess
definitely see it like a single player thing altogether. I would have been perfectly happy with it as well.
yeah, yeah. I guess just based on the first 5 hours, certainly. I don't know. So this may be our biggest disagreement then, actually. But so for me, as much as I like the idea of the open world, I feel like either this game needed way, way, way longer in the cooker or a different, more focused direction. Because to me, so I read this in a review. I think I can't remember what review it was, but someone said this in a review, and I can't believe how true this is ringing to me. As much as I like aesthetically and from an art design perspective, the world is unbelievably inspired. It's a very cool city to just drive around in and soak in the sights, right? We agree there?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's my favorite part of the game for
Sure.
sure.
Yeah, no, it's probably mine as well.
Yeah.
It's certainly high up on the priorities list. But for me, unfortunately, just whenever I kind of like interacted with it, I felt like if I scratched a bit too, if I tried to like interact with NPCs too much, it kind of came to light how superficial the world felt to me. Like I didn't feel like I could randomly have interactions with any NPC out on the street, and there are a ton of them. They all just have a single line they say to you, and they continue on with their day. The way they react to when you start shooting at like having a shootout with like a gang or whatever, or even if you start shooting at them, the way they react is it feels so basic and just superficial. It doesn't feel like it's an AI actually responding to something I'm doing. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's there's like caked animations for like when you shoot or like when you run someone over. I agree with you there. It seems very like it's almost like watching TV and but you
Yeah,
interact with it like sort of. And
yeah,
most of the I think if all the NPCs, like the main NPCs for like quest giving and all that, you interact with them through the phone. You don't really see them in game.
yeah. This is
Yeah.
actually, you know what? This brings me on to another. So I'm sorry. I'm going to sound very negative on the game, and I
No,
swear
don't
I'm
worry.
not. I'm not quite that negative. I think that this game has a lot to offer, but like I said, I think it has a lot of problems as well, even just beyond the bugs. But what I also think that like one thing it not being an open world game could have improved is so I don't know if you've had this, but one of the most immersion breaking things that's happened to me so far is how bombarded you get once the world starts to open up with different things to do. So you'll be on like a quest, like maybe one of the main quests, you'll be in an important conversation, then suddenly you'll get like 2 calls from 2 different people or 3 text messages about like, oh, we have a car for sale, and it's just like, I don't need to see this right now. I'm trying to like get engrossed in the characters and the story. Like, have you been a bit overwhelmed like that at all, or has that
Yeah,
not really?
the moment you get on the street, you get like, 3 phone calls, like 2
Yeah.
text messages, and like the main quest is like calling you and like in big letters it's like, oh, phone call happening, press T, like right in the
Yeah.
middle of the screen. It's like, oh man, just give me a minute. Like let me, drive around, let me play GTA for a bit, let me shoot
Yeah.
some people. But like
No,
you don't get the chance. You just start side questing really.
yeah, no, it's a bit crazy, and I feel like if they cut back on the amount of content they had, or like I said, if it was in more of a linear game and you had these side objectives, I think they could have focused on reducing the number, but like polishing the ones they had to a mirror shine, and I think that could have gone over better. Or even if it was an open world game, you don't necessarily need to not make an open world game for that. It just feels like everything's constantly crashing into each other slightly awkwardly. Yeah, I don't know. I don't. It
It, it-
definitely hurts the game in my opinion.
yeah, it was very ambitious and they got most of it right. It just doesn't like it's very disjointed in everything that it wants to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like there's a ton of systems in this game, like we've said, and this is, like I said, it's kind of emblematic of a core issue for me, or a core design philosophy, where they went for like as much stuff as possible as opposed to having the best stuff possible.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I'm gonna push it into the gameplay for a minute because I have like a
Sure.
big thing about the gunplay.
Oh, go for
Like
it.
we have like you have like stealth and whatnot, which it doesn't work too well in my opinion. You have like the sliding and the dashing, and you can go into cover and you can shoot over. And like on paper, like all these things work well on their own, but when you try to like link these things together in actual combat, like it's very janky. You dash randomly when you don't want to, you slide randomly, and like
Ye-
nothing like flows well together. Like on their own, they're great, but nothing flows together within each
Yeah.
other.
I completely agree. Actually, it was really funny. So I had my girlfriend Chloe play just the intro of the game, and she's very big on playing game. Like she loves Skyrim, and she always goes for a stealth archer build. Like she
Yeah.
loves sneaking. That's her thing. So she found it incredibly frustrating, and it, from my perspective, was hilarious to watch. But she would be like trying a stealth round some guy, and because of the way they've mapped the dash button. So for anyone who doesn't know, you basically just tap the button you want to move in the direction or dash in the direction of. You tap it twice, and then you dash in that direction. So when you're stealthing, if you like move somewhere and stop and then you start again quickly, sometimes you'll just dash out of stealth because you've pressed the two buttons closely together. And so Chloe just like completely destroyed her stealth status over and over and over again by doing this. And it was like, I mean, from my perspective, it was fucking hilarious, you know? But like from a game design perspective, I feel like this could have been tightened up and solved in a much more simple way.
So frustrating. I dash out of everything. Like what I even I think it's a PC thing maybe where it's just, you know, like people just click like their keys, like double click them like just by I don't know, by routine or like whatever. But I dash for no reason sometimes. I feel like I'm just moving straight and I just dash.
But the crazy thing about it as well, though, is I feel like it was so easy to fix. Instead of just making it so that you double tap a button to dash, just whatever direction you're holding, bind dash to another button so that you press the dash button, you just dash in whatever direction you're already moving. That seems like a super easy fix, and it's just not there.
Shift to the side, right? Like shift to the left with shift A, shift D, not like double tap A. It's kind of awkward.
It's very awkward. That I completely agree for sure. Yeah. No, that's it's definitely been an issue. But I mean, like I said, it's an interesting game because we've talked about quite a lot of the issues, but ultimately at the core of it, I do feel like this game has a lot of interesting concepts and a ton of heart. Have you done, so my favorite quest so far, and I'm not going to spoil it too much for the people at home, but have you done, so you know Delmain, the cab service?
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know the mission, right? Yeah. The side quest where you round up all the cabs. Yeah. It's so, there's basically, to explain, there's a cab service called Delmain that's functionally run by an AI, and the AI is kind of presented as sentient, like it's a very intelligent AI. It's a general AI. It can respond to people's wants and needs on the fly. It's not just like a specific AI like we have today. It's a very futuristic concept for sure, but it fits the world. And there's a particular side quest where basically after you kind of, so Delmain is this AI is kind of like a character you get to know as the story goes on. And after your initial meeting with him and working with him initially, he then calls you because something's gone wrong with some of his cabs. And resolving this is one of the most like human touches in a side quest I've had. It was, I honestly, like, I don't want to spoil it. So really, like, if you haven't played the side quest, make sure you play it when Delmain calls you for an issue after like the inciting incident, I'll say. It's one of the most fun quests in the game for sure. And there's so much heart in this game, in so many of the ideas in quests like that. Like that side quest is probably my favorite part in the game so far. It was incredible, like a genuinely really fun, heartfelt moment, you know?
Yeah, no, literally it was like you will have a wholesome moment between you and a taxi cab that talks to you.
Yeah.
And like you're not complaining. Like it's actually really fun.
No, it's honestly it's great, and but there's other ideas in the game that I feel like have this human touch and just make me want to play the game more, even though there are issues with it. Like I love the brain dances and the concept of doing the detective work through it. So again, for those who don't know, a brain dance is essentially a data representation of a particular person's memory. So in this world, because there's so many cameras and, you know, analytical equipment and technologies everywhere, it's so pervasive. If somebody sees something and they have, like, I guess technology within them that can record it, what people can do is they can edit what they call it a brain dance, and it's just an experience this person's had, but the data of it is kind of extracted and can be put inside of your mind, so you can experience exactly what they've experienced. But then you also have people that like essentially hack brain dances, so you can edit them. So when you're watching this memory of somebody else in another setting you had nothing to do with, you can actually come out as like a third-person viewer of this particular memory and then analyze the different sights and sounds and thermals and all these different like attributes of this entire area and see things that even they missed. And I think that is an incredibly interesting concept, you know?
I had no idea it was coming. I didn't know it was a thing at all before playing.
Exactly
like
the same. It blew my mind the first time it happened. I was like, this is fucking cool. This feels like some detective heist shit, you know?
yeah, yeah, and even when you explained it perfectly, it's way more overwhelming than that when you first get in. Like,
Yeah.
it's incredible. You can like detect sounds throughout the clip. You can detect thermal temperatures, and you can like detect like visuals. And
Hmm.
like you have to like go through multiple times to like basically be a video editor and like
Yeah.
find things that you missed out on.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's super cool in that aspect for sure. I was actually so here's another like I guess slightly minor thing. I don't know how you felt about this, but it's been my experience and the two people I know that's played its experience that I thought so. I thought the game was kind of underwhelming from the like very start. I feel like
Yeah.
the first hour maybe is I don't know how you found it, but I found it very underwhelming. It took a while to get going and for me to really want to sink my teeth into the world, you know? Did you have that experience or were you more or less hooked from the get-go?
Yeah, like the main because you go off into the main story from the beginning. You can't really do the open world sections yet.
Yeah.
It was very like it was enjoyable, but I was like, oh, it's just any other game really. And I don't know what it was. It just like for me too, like it just picked up like when you're in the open world, it tells you, hey, you can start doing whatever you want. I was like, wait, like I'm into it now. Like I can
Yeah.
pick whatever I want to do. Like this is great. And like you go and visit different parts of the city, like none of it's locked off, which I hate from
Mm.
other games, like when they lock off the open world sections until like later in the campaign.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
So like when I was able to go anywhere, I was like, okay, yeah, I can do this. And like
Mm.
now I just can't wait to play like all the time now. Now I just
Yeah,
want to keep
yeah. No, I'm the exact same. It really is such an interesting game because I know I've had a little old moan about a lot of the flaws of the game,
yeah,
but like it ultimately, like I said at the very start, the main thing that brings me back is always the atmosphere and the fact that you can explore this drop dead gorgeous city. You know, like the sounds and it blew my fucking mind that they got original songs from real life artists and put them under
yeah,
fake names for the radio soundtrack. And so I'm actually curious. Here's this is kind of a tangent that's not super important to a lot of people, I'm sure. So I'll go over it quick. I'm a bit of a music nerd, right?
yeah. Okay,
The soundtrack to this game, they have got some fucking deep cuts. Like the
dude.
artists they got on this radio like list is absurd. Have you got? Is that something you've like picked up on then, or?
I had the copyright music disabled, but I did listen to like some of the soundtracks, like the artists, like ASAP Rocky and all that. Dude, everything is awesome. Like they
Yeah,
could drop these right now, and everybody would be like, like this shit's great. Like
yeah.
everything is awesome.
But
The music they nailed perfectly, in my opinion.
no, for sure. I completely agree. It's one of those things that just made it such a believable world, even though it is so superficial, weirdly. Like, it's the atmosphere every time. Like, the fact that they put so
Yeah.
much effort into the art direction and the music, it creates this very engulfing world that you just kind of want to, you just want to sink your teeth into, right?
Yeah, and I like one thing is like in games, your character in the beginning always has like like brain damage or something. He forgets the world, right? Like he forgets everything about the world, and like the characters explain it to you. I hate when they explain to me like the simple stuff. In this game, your character like assumes he knows things about the city. You're
Yes.
just the one that doesn't know. Like brain dance, they don't explain it to you. He's like, yeah, I've done it a million times. So when you actually go into the brain dance without any explanation, you're like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Like,
It's like
it's
you're
like great surprise.
experiencing. Yeah, no, you experience it in the most like pure sense, right? It hasn't
Yeah,
been spoiled in any sense of the word for you.
yeah. Like you act as V pretending like you know what you're talking about, but as soon as you see it happen, you're like, oh shit, this is what it is. And it's like
Yeah.
awesome. Like the
No, for
story,
sure.
like the world just unravels in front of you, and like
Hmm.
no one explains it to you. You figure it out on your own. So I
Yeah.
love that.
Actually, a little segue. Speaking of unraveling,
Yep.
no, this isn't a sponsorship at all. But no, genuinely, like one of my favorite things actually is about where the game started picking up for me is when the main story started unraveling. So for those who don't know, I'm not going to spoil it, but the first like 5 hours of the game, it builds up to a certain event, and the build up to that after this for me slightly lackluster first hour, the build up to that was done so well. Like going around to the individual people, getting different details for this like big job that you're gonna do, putting the pieces in place to get it to work, getting the information, like that was some cool fucking shit. In my opinion, like going to meet Evelyn at the very start in the
Yeah.
Afterlife Club, going to like a private lounge, you've got like a holographic dancer lady like doing pole dancing or whatever, and you're just like you're like so buried within the underground of this city, and you really do feel it. In my opinion, it really comes through in like all of the character design, the way that the story kind of boils to that first major event. Did you get that as well?
Yeah, it was a very clever way to like build the world for you. Because most
Yeah.
games are just like, you do all the quests in one go and like it's very like streamlined. And this one, it's like, oh, you can split off and like, talk to her first or talk to him first. And
It,
it was a very good way to build the world, and it was really cool.
Yeah, it felt like a very natural way to do it
Yeah,
without spoon feeding at all, right? It was like you experientially just go to all these clubs to meet different people. You fight like certain factions to get hold of certain equipment that you need for this thing. Like the story in the first like 5 hours is so well directed, and I think that was a real strong point, at least of that part, right?
yeah. One thing we haven't talked about is that in the story quests, at least, right, it feels like you have a choice in like what happens with the outcome, right? There's like a few different options that you can go through dialogue to like affect with the story. It feels like, I don't know if it does affect the final outcome or how it affects the final outcome, but there is like story choices that you can make that differs from other people that I've
Oh,
noticed as
okay.
well.
I gotta say, actually, to be honest, this is one of the reasons I I kind of think it could have maybe been better as a linear game, is that actually I don't really know how much that affects stuff.
The outcome, yeah.
Yeah,
But
I'm like, it feels a little bit more like illusion of choice to me, which, to be fair, like almost no game has true choice. Coding in
yeah,
true choice into a game is nigh on impossible, right? So almost every game has the illusion of choice, and that's not a bad thing. But I think, I don't know, it feels almost obvious to me that it's going to be an illusion of choice rather than actual choice. But I mean, obviously, we can't say right now. I'm hoping to play the whole game and have like a full-on review out, maybe next week, maybe the week after. I guess we'll see. So I'll speak about it more in depth then. That's all I can really say for now. But yeah, I think we've covered a decent amount of everything really. Do you have any? I guess just overall thoughts. I mean, well, I can tell you what. Firstly, actually, is there anything else you want to cover? Anything we haven't talked about?
no, honestly, I think we got a lot of things down and we explained them pretty well, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Overall, would you recommend this game?
I know it sounded like we were criticizing it a lot, but it's purely out of love, or at least for me. Like I love this game. I can continue playing it. I give it like, I don't know, right now an 8. We'll see how the story goes for me to kick it up a little more.
That's fair, yeah. So this is interesting because like so I wouldn't want to score it just yet because I like to, play. I want to play the whole thing before I score it,
Yeah,
basically. But honestly, I would probably be a lot harsher than you, and even I am like, I want to play more of it, right? Like
like you're charmed by it. Yeah.
it's like my head is like, dude, this game is like, at the minute in its current state, based on your experience, this is like maybe like a 5 or a 6 out of 10. I will say that I'm a very harsh critic as well. Like it's just, I kind of revel in it a little bit, to be honest. But I honestly, like, on a just pure like logical level, I'm like, some of the systems are real freaking clunky and there's a lot of bugs,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like, but even though I think I would have to personally give it like a 5 or 6 so far, I can't stop playing it. I like, on an
Yeah.
experiential level, I do kind of love it. It might be, like I said earlier, it might be the most flawed game that I can wholeheartedly say I love, which is a very weird place to be.
But like I feel like everybody is like having that same place as you right now. It's just
Yeah.
like I can't put this game down. It's just
Yeah.
the setting, they know, like if the setting was based on a scale of 10, the setting's like a 20. You really can't. You
Sure.
can't beat it. I love it too much. Like I love going in and just playing. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is.
And it's like, it's such a unique setting within gaming as well. Like the concept of a dystopian, like hyper-capitalist city has definitely been done before. I mean, even Final Fantasy VII is that to an extent, but the
Yeah.
specific aesthetic they've got here and to the scale they've done it is something that I don't think has really been done, Certainly
Yeah.
not in recent memory, especially as like we've had this big fantasy kick, especially this decade with like games like The Witcher and Dark Souls being
Oh yeah.
such like juggernauts, So there's something with the technology we have today, something like this really I don't think has been achieved. But yeah. Is that I mean, is that everything everything you think you've got to say then?
I think so, man. I think that's
Cool.
it.
I'd say actually just a quick question. Who's your favorite character so far?
Man. I gotta think about this one. I like Delamain a lot, actually. As much,
Delmain's real cool, yeah.
yeah. I'm not gonna call him my favorite yet, but like I don't know. It's strange talking about Delamain like he's like a person, but like he's so like personified. It's really cool.
So
Um,
this is one of the I guess like This is one of the things I think could become very interesting about the game moving forward, and what I hope to talk about in my final review is that so many of the concepts I think are so interesting, and they've done some of them before and they haven't done others. So with things like Delamain, the idea of having an AI that, questions, like, it's a robot pushed so far that it feels like a human, so it questions what exactly is human? What does it mean to be human, right? It necessarily asks these questions. But I mean, I don't know. Have you seen Blade Runner 20, the new Blade Runner film? Have you seen it?
No, I just know like general story things about it.
Sure. Well, basically, that I would say that film, and also one of my favorite films of all time, a film called Her, Her, which is a film. It's essentially a romantic comedy almost, where a dude falls in love with his computer because the operating system has been pushed to the point of being an AI in the same vein as something like Delamain, right? And I think that concept has been explored in other sci-fi, but here it really feels like it fits the world, and in other places I feel like it exceeds what a lot of sci-fi has done. So for example, the idea of like Johnny living in your head and being this digitalized consciousness, and kind of like posing the question of like, okay, well, if he's in your head and if he occupies the same body, like, you have to accept that at some point you end within your own body and Johnny takes over, right? And you have all these augmentations, and it kind of becomes a question of like, where do you end? What is you as a like consciousness, right? And I think all of these questions are super interesting. I just hope they stick the landing, and I hope they have some kind of satisfying story-based conclusion that ties it all together,
Yeah, I haven't even thought about that sort of like fight between like consciousness and like AI like going on. I hope they answer that question as well. Like I hope they answer
Yeah,
all of those
because
by the end of the game.
it's such an interesting concept, because the concept of a digitalized consciousness is something that people have been playing around with for a while, but it's virtual, like, based on our current technology and current understanding of the brain, it's just not something that's really gone beyond theory at this point, right?
Yeah, it's not really
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I watched a Kurzgesagt video talking about this specifically, and supposedly they have digitally mapped, like, I think it was a single cubic centimeter, or no, sorry, a single, like, it was like a 1 millimeter cube of mouse brain. They've actually digitalized that, but it took something like 4 months to achieve, because it's so much data even in that tiny amount of brain, because there are so many like neural pathways and that kind of thing. But either way, in this hyper futuristic world where you do have this clear digital consciousness, like, once you have Johnny as a almost like sentient conscious thing within this AI chip, if you put them in another person, you're sharing the same body. That's a really interesting concept, just period, right?
Yeah, I think they go not further in this concept, but like a different way. I don't know if you've done any of the fight clubs in the game, but the first one you do, it's between like two twins, but the twins
Yeah.
wanted to share a mind,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
like they have no problem going with these weird concepts and just like normalizing them into the world.
And
So
but
like
this is kind of why I think it's so believable, though, because not
yeah,
only do they normalize them within the world, but it makes logical sense that they would exist within this world, right?
yeah, like the way the chips work, the way prosthetics work, like the way cybernetics work, like whatever they say, I believe. Like, oh, this definitely happens. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not like thrown off when it comes to like believability. Like, I believe it.
No, 100%. Yeah. I think, yeah, ultimately that is what has drawn me back. Like I said, that and the fact the atmosphere is fucking stellar. But
Yeah,
I mean, I think this has been a great conversation. I think that's pretty much everything I have to say really about the game so far. Overall, I gotta say, like, if you're someone who isn't particularly bothered by bugs and you love the concepts and some of the ideas we've talked about, I would honestly still recommend this game, because it is going to get patched, and sure, some of the game flaws won't be fixed. Like, I can't see them, undoing the over reliance on picking up tons of junk and crafting and all that, and maybe too many
yeah,
tech trees and some slightly bland upgrades. They're not going to redo these, but if that isn't something that super bothers you and the world sounds like something you'll really get a lot out of, I would still honestly recommend this game, even though I think it probably will be a lot better in a year's time, roughly.
yeah. I agree with you. I mean, I'm a fan of being like a patient gamer. Like, right, the price is gonna go down. CD Projekt Red's always, very generous when it comes to deals with their games. So if
Yeah,
you're patient, I think you'll get the best experience possible within a year's time for sure.
yeah, 100%. And if it's on sale by then it might be worth waiting if you don't want to soil your first impressions of the game, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It just, I guess it comes down to like how, in terms of like whether you should buy this game or not, I think it comes down to how tolerant you are of jank, be that in the bugs or be that in the, the game design itself. Because there is a lot of heart in this game. And like I said, this might be like on an objective level, this might be the worst game that I love, It's such an interesting way to phrase it, but I really kind of do feel that way. And I feel like a lot of people do. But yeah, that's pretty much all my thoughts, honestly.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, really.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for the conversation, man. Where can people find you?
They can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Mudizle and on YouTube as well. Thank you,
Cool.
Devin.
All right. Well, what do you actually? Jay, go on, show yourself a bit. What do you do?
I stream a bunch of variety games. On my YouTube, I just go and do little gameplay videos every once in a while. If not, I try to find like little guides that I can do as well. But other than that, I'm just like I try to be an entertaining Let's Player, really.
Cool. All right. Well, I'd highly recommend his streams. I've certainly enjoyed my fair share of them. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Cheers for the conversation. Stay safe, and I'll see you around, right, bud?
Thank you. You too, man.
Cool.
Thank you
Peace
so
out.
much.
No worries.